There we go. We are. All right, we're back. We're back with part two. We're here with Mitch Krause. He's telling us about Humanity, his new environmentally friendly business that's helping to try to bring awareness to, I suppose, would you say it's mostly younger people, or who's your target demographic for your business, Mitch?
Yeah, definitely younger people. High school, undergrad to what we call it young professional, I'd say.
Cool. All right. So when you were talking there, I don't know, you're a little bit younger than I am, but I'm a huge Simpsons fan. And there's a great quote by Mr. Burns where he's talking about nature. And he says, Mother Nature started this war, and now she wants to give up just because she's losing it? That's one of my favorite Simpsons lines. They're filled with great lines, but that's one that just kind of locked into the memory bank. And I was like, that's so funny because for so long, humans fought nature. You know, I mean, we didn't have, central heating and air conditioning. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have the things that now make us comfortable. And, the stark nature of nature is it will kill you.
Yeah.
And so I do think that, at least people maybe my generation and up have sort of maybe a skewed perception of how our relationship with nature should be. And we do see it as a war, and we do see nature as something to be tamed. And at this stage in humanity, we have tamed it. We have skyscrapers. We have, we're cloud seeding in Saudi Arabia, making it rain. And, we've started to, dominate nature to a certain degree there. And I think that a lot of people who might be out of touch with what you're trying to bring to the table, the proverbial table, if you will, is it's not a war. We are not at war with nature. And furthermore, our relationship of being at war with nature has led us to a place where humanity could potentially go extinct because we're not respecting nature. And so now here you're coming along trying to reshape that whole relationship. And so tell us more about how humanity does that. You mentioned a little bit about the gamification, which that's such a great angle to take because, like you said, with Strava or whatever, I have Strava, I've got some other apps that when they gamify it, there is sort of a fun, I want to level up, I want the next badge, I want to have a social media engagement where my friends can see whatever it might be. So why don't you get into a little bit more of the details about what you're doing? But first, before you say that, is your business an app? What is it?
Yeah, it's an app.
Okay.
It's hard for me to say just an app though.
Sure, it's more than just an app.
Right,
But how people engage with it, how people interact with it is through an app.
Through an app,
Okay,
correct.
got it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it helps to say like where we are, but yeah, we're about to release our beta.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
in like a couple weeks here.
Awesome.
We got a team of 10 people now.
Oh man,
which is
pretty solid team.
Yeah. 3 of us are from the master's program. That we're from Western Colorado, and then we've got a CTO who's a full stack developer. We've got an intern in software development from California. We've got a couple people in the Midwest in product design. Someone who's helping the CFO, like finance stuff. The team's growing, and it's been unbelievable, and we've got full steam ahead right now. But basically, our whole fundamental principle is we're empowering experts, people who have taken their lives basically to study a really niche aspect of the environment, right?
Cool.
And also, what is the environment, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, it's recycling, it's natural science, it's this, but it's so much more. And so, we're trying to represent these, unrepresented topics and create discovery, right? And so, ultimately, right now, we're onboarding experts to test it out, to build curriculum in areas that they're experts in, and we're kind of opening that door to anybody, as far as they meet that expert criteria and they're a credible person to speak on behalf and teach on behalf of whatever that subject matter is. But ultimately, we want biomimicry engineering, we want environmental economics, we want like epistemological, like global south like ways of knowing, right? We want environmental history.
What's a global south way of knowing?
It's just basically just saying how like there's different ways of looking at our way of viewing the world, right? And so like in the West, we have a very specific way of viewing the world, and it's kind of hard to realize that until you dive into other ways of and like that was one thing we had a lecture, Dr. Ricardo Vasquez Perez in the program did it. It was called Global South Perspectives, and it hit me like a bag of bricks, honestly. And I was like, wait, this is so simple, because it's just like just thinking about life in a different way of reciprocity, of holistic like nature of like, if I do this, how does it affect the thing way over there, right? It's like, what about other people?
I was kind of waiting for you to get there.
Yeah, like collectivists,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And like, it's not to say the West doesn't think like, what about other people? But it's not embedded in ourselves as much,
The
right?
West has a very individualistic culture.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes America so great, but it's also one of the bigger problems as far as trying to get people to think about somebody other than themselves.
Right.
We're a very individually minded country. And as somebody who's been around the world, it's interesting when you see other cultures and other places where that is not so. I taught English in South Korea for a year. And in South Korea, they have a very we mindset. It's not a me mindset. Which there's a little bit of, what I think Americans would consider to be like a sheep-like mentality, where they kind of go along with the herd.
Sure.
And as somebody who's an individual, that's a little off-putting. But on the flip side of that thing, you take something like trash, for example, right? So in America, trash is a you problem.
Right.
It's your trash, right?
Right.
Like if you have your trash bin at the end of your driveway and I come looking in your trash, you're going to come from inside your house and be like, what are you doing looking in my trash? Because it's your trash. Whereas a lot of the rest of the world, trash is a we problem. And so in that way, it's not your trash, it's our trash. And so in that way, if I see something on the ground that's litter, I'm not going to just walk past it like we often do here in this country. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to put it into a trash bin, which are everywhere. They're easily located, because the mentality is we don't want you to have to walk a block or two with trash in your hand. We want you to be able to pick it up and help us and help our society and help our community and make it easy for you. Yeah. So I think trash is a really great example of what you're kind of getting at, which is particularly in the West, we do have a very individualized mentality, not just about the environment, about our whole way of life in general.
Yep.
And to be considerate of anybody else, I think, is a break in the paradigm that we're usually used to sort of operating within.
Totally. And like, I guess how many people are subjected to that, like fish out of water, right? Like experience of that, right? And like that took me again going into a master's degree and a lot of money,
right?
And it shouldn't be that way. Like we should be subjecting ourselves to a diverse of selection of ways of knowing, a diverse selection of education and topics and things, because the more we're subjected to, the more we know, and we can then take the things and the good from here and the good from here and build something better, right?
So coming back to Global South, why is it Global? Why is it not Global North? Global South.
Well, Global North is in many ways the Western world.
And so Global South is this other mentality that we're sort of talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just didn't understand
for sure
how we got to that as the term.
Yeah.
Like, basically what you're saying is that, like, are we talking like Southern Hemisphere, or what's the South? Well,
it's more so Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So,
and this is a place where they're already kind of putting into action some of the things you're trying to create the awareness here. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think it's just more just like, hey, let's know what other people are doing elsewhere.
And
right?
tell it, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like in the sense of, going back to collectivism, going back to even like, I think like indigenous ways of knowing, right? So like the indigenous perspective of the world, the the looking in the longer term, right?
Yeah.
And that's the definition of sustainability. Is like, how do you ensure a better world for future generations?
Right. Planting trees you're never going to sit in the
Right.
shade of.
Right. And then having that respect of like, yes, this is my life now, but I'm just renting, the planet, right? And there's so many more people on.
We are not getting our deposit back, folks.
Yeah, security deposit. Yeah,
God's keeping that one. He's like, you
cooked. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, to that point, I think like, and it's I don't believe anyone's malicious. I don't. I think we're guided by certain, messaging principles. Like.
But I mean, I'm going to push back against you a little bit there. I might agree with you that people might not be innately malicious, but corporations are.
Yeah.
And that's why they're getting away with dumping nuclear waste in the river and making three-eyed fish like in The Simpsons.
For sure.
And that's part of why we don't have
right.
a ecological economy, because it's more profitable to be a pollutant.
Right, but what also enables that, right, is like people. Right. Yeah. So if we're not,
and maybe our ignorance.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it. Ignorance, or I hate to say that.
Desire to care.
Right, and I hate to go down this road, but the system of education and
right.
who decides what's taught and everything like that, you can't disagree that there's maybe not a connection to this undereducated aspect of environmental principles and things that might push back on those very capitalist, hyper profiting,
right.
Actions and models. And
but I mean, as I've grown up, I lived in a time before recycling, so it's like that wasn't even part of our way of approaching life, and then they introduced it, and since they've introduced it, what I've noticed, part of the reason it became mainstream and popular is that it was more profitable for businesses. They saw like, oh, if we recycle and we upcycle, we actually save money on our bottom line.
Right.
And it was with them on board that they were able to kind of launch it, at least in the northern hemisphere, not globally, but semi-globally, so that now most of the rest of the world. I remember I had a friend come down from Canada, and we were at a friend's house, and he was like, "Where's your compost?" And I was like, Americans don't really compost. And like his jaw dropped. He's from Canada. Composting is part of their trash recycle compost. And he just looked at me. He's like, why don't Americans compost? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I said, you just throw it in the trash. And he did. And it hurt his heart. I could see him to like throw the eggshells or whatever we were making in the trash, because he's coming from a society where the idea of not composting is negligent. It's not just harmful. It's a bad way to approach like being a human in the world.
Right.
And now that was many years ago. I think that I have a compost thing now, and composting is becoming a little bit more mainstream here in America. Certainly over the rest of the world.
Sure.
And it's quite shocking as somebody who personally composts how much you can reduce your trash simply because a good chunk of it is food waste.
Right.
And so the reason I bring that up is, you're hinting and kind of alluding to this idea that, we do have a capitalistic mentality that's, to a certain extent, been raping the environment for profit. And now we're starting to realize that that's coming back to bite us in the ass. And we got to do something different. And obviously, humanity is one of the ways that you're trying to bring that awareness to. It sounds like a younger generation, which is personally who I would be targeting, because old people tend to be set in their ways.
Yeah, and I think there's a high propensity for even the older generations to want to engage too, and I think they're equally as lost, but they just have less to lose.
Sure.
And, I think young people have the most to lose, and that's kind of the whole thing. That's unfortunate, and at the end of the day, like what we've got a heck of a deficit in our. If you look at this from like a sporting perspective, if we're in a game right now, right? We're not ahead. We're a bit behind, and I hate to like our brand as humanity is like very much let's stay away from the doom and gloom, but we got to tell how it is too. and there's aspects of that, and like the reality is we're a bit behind, and we have star players sitting on the sidelines, right? And so and those players want to be in the game, but there's no way to get them in right now, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And there's such a barrier, and that's, you know, cost of education. It's also just this fear mongering. It's like, it's just incredibly overwhelming. And then when you talk about like climate change, you know, something so big, why do my individual actions matter, right? Like, and so we got to pull away from this whole, let's just talk about what your individual actions are, blah, 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 and let's actually like try to empower each person and go beyond that and help them develop a sense of understanding of the people who are telling them to do those things, right? So that they can decide what to do themselves with it, right? And I think like we're robbing people of their own agency by just stopping there and saying like, well, let me tell you what to do and that's it, right? And like, how about we just put the knowledge in front of them, put the tools in front of them to develop their own unique understanding to this huge problem, right? Or, you know, and the problem being is just disconnect,
right? You
know, and then see what they do with it,
right?
Because humans are freaking awesome, dude, and like, yeah, there's so many like unbelievably creative people out there, right? And everyone has a different way of solving a different problem, and so we're just putting the tools in people's hands. You know?
So let's drill down a little bit more into that. So you've said a couple of things that are really interesting to me. The word agency is one that I like a lot because basically what you're suggesting is that you're going to empower the individual to be able to make their own responsible decisions.
Right.
And that comes from an education, that comes from an understanding, that comes without the opinions or the direction from somebody else, which is often what we're getting, and often that's misguided. So tell us a little bit more. You've got an app that's called Humanity. While you're getting ready to launch the beta, but in the vision, the grand vision of the business.
Yep.
And so this app is going to gamify environmentalism. It's going to provide expert knowledge on a variety of different environmental topics, which the intention of that is to then give the individual playing with the app the agency to then go ahead and make their own decision.
Yep.
You know, another thing I really like about the vision here is that, like you were just alluding to, every person has their own different life experience that they're bringing to this giant problem, which is, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, we're talking about an existential threat to humanity.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't fix the environment, it will kill us.
Right.
You know, and we're right now, you know, dominating it in such a way that it really has no reason to align with us. It's, we're at war with nature. You know? And I do think that helping to educate people and inform them, and then on top of that, it sounds to me like you're trying to provide some sort of platform for scaffolding to create solutions.
Yep.
So, you know, let's just say I download the Humanity app, I jump in there, and then what happens?
Sure.
I'm going to have a bunch of different menus, or tell me a little bit more about like, and then also if there's anything that you got going on with the business that's outside of the app, tell me about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, super excited to tell you all about it. So, enter Humanity, right? The first thing is we get to know you. And this is kind of not uncommon for most apps, right? It's just like, what are your interests? What are your drivers? You know, and from here, then you enter into, you know, your who you are, how you want to represent yourself on Humanity, and you know, comes down to the community aspect of it. So you're kind of putting up your own profile, right? But it's not as much focused on that sense of like other people seeing you. It's just you tracking your own progress.
Sure, and
right?
Like you mentioned like THROGH. If you go on a run, it says Mitch did a run.
Right.
You know, kudos, you know, and click that. So obviously, being able to see what your friends are doing creates some sort of I don't know, motivation or desire to want to continue to both engage with the app, but also contribute in whatever way that. So keep. I didn't mean
you're all good. You're all good. And like one of the things we're really excited about, we call the community page. So if you imagine like a dynamic, like live, like newsletter, it's kind of the style of this, and it's builds like a sense of community, a snapshot of the entire platform and what's going on. So we're gonna do Humanity Weekly, where we do like a video, kind of like this, you know, and we hopefully will have guests too, environmental experts. We'll do like career spotlights, right, with environmental careers. We'll say, you know, what's going on within the platform. We'll shout out users. We'll do fun stuff, and ultimately talk about what's going on too in the platform. And then if you imagine, you know, on that same page, there's like a big like meter, right? And the idea being is your individual actions give you individual points, and they work towards individual, you know, accolades like Strava, right?
Yeah, like the little medals and awards.
Right. Well, the community page then shows the aggregate of everybody, right? So now you're seeing your individual actions turn into collective action, right? And then when the meter fills, our whole game plan is to do on-the-ground projects.
Oh, cool.
You know, execute with sponsors, with, you know, with our experts, you know, and like ultimately have really effective projects to serve as case studies, but also to serve as, you know, examples for people.
Give me an example of what one of these projects might look like. Once the community reached the goal, we filled the thermometer thing, and now you've got whatever, the money, the effort, the expertise to build something. What are you going to build?
Yeah, I mean, that could be like, you know, like disrupting food deserts in underprivileged communities with like urban agroforestry projects.
Oh, very cool.
You know,
so like gardens in the front of their driveways. And stuff,
yeah, for sure.
I've seen that in like Norway or whatever. They do, rather than like, you know, we have our little community garden here, but there's like individual plots, you know, and it's like, yeah, the people do share. They do. I've got friends that have plots over there, and they do share, but at the same time, if they caught you picking their food, they would be pissed because you got to ask permission to take whatever they're growing.
That's fair.
Whereas like in Norway or Denmark, I'm not sure where, somewhere in Europe, these neighborhoods have gotten together, and they're like, you grow the corn, you grow the watermelon, I'll grow the tomatoes, you grow the lettuce, and then it's a communal garden, but it's all in their front drives, you know, and in that way, you are allowed to just go pick the corn because it's not just they haven't really grown it, but it's for everybody.
Exactly.
Is that a good example of what you're getting at?
Yeah, you know, I think what's really cool about this is I think the platform and the community is going to decide, right? We're gonna, you know, like that's like. Well, that's how we're gonna figure out like, all right, what are our people into? You know,
well, that's great because different communities are gonna have different needs.
Right. Well, and it's also just like, hey, yeah, taking something from the digital world and bringing it into the real world is really key, and that's a big part of our brand strategy and our whole identity. Is like
I'm trying to get a better picture of what it is.
Yeah, and like. So, and then you imagine like, all right, so there's this community page, right? And that's like your snapshot, that's the outside view. And then you tab over to, you know, discovery and learning, right? And here, that's where we have the curated pathway for you, right? And that's where you have micro-learning, you have larger kind of lessons, you have our tools that were given to experts, you know, and the curriculum they build out is, if it aligns with you and your, you know, who you are, it shows up to you, right?
Gives you a roadmap for how to contribute.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, and this is subject to change, obviously, in the exact way we designed it as we go into testing. But the whole point is we're showing you new things, right? Really cool, like we're incentivizing you to discover, right? New, shiny things about the environment, right? And it's aligned with potentially your, you know, your intended career. It's in your values, right? And like ideally it's a funnel, and you walk into the funnel and you're like, oh my gosh, this is interesting, it's more surface oriented. But then you start saying, wow, I really like this, right? Or I really like all of these, like these multiple things. And you go deeper into those pathways, and as you get deeper, you know, you're not only building a deeper competency, but you're also now like maybe getting a certificate, right?
Sure.
You might be all of a sudden with a mentor, right? Because these experts, as you go deeper, are also teaching, you
Sure.
know, like that level of like depth, right?
Well, yeah, I can imagine if they're experts, they have a desire to make an impact, whether that's themselves directly or through their students.
Right.
You know, if you can send an army of students out to get what you could do by yourself, that's a massive win.
Right. And,
So-
and at the end of that is hopefully like, you know, empowerment to build your own project, right?
That's what I'm hearing. So it's interesting because now the picture that you paint, I had no idea what your company was when we sat down here.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting a better understanding that it's not just, it's like if you could, it's like if Strava had like a clean the trail part of its app, where as you clean the trail or as you got community to clean the trail, it filled the meter. And then once you filled the meter, I don't know, maybe you go build a new trail or whatever it might be. But it sounds to me like what you're doing is like sort of twofold in that it is an educational app, it is an informative app, it is a place where you can go to receive, you know, top tier, high quality, maybe cutting edge, unknown environmental information collected and curated by you from a group of experts who are part of your humanity business. And then beyond that, bringing that information directly into the real world where there is something tangible, there is something that you can see or do and physically be involved in. And it's taking that like theoretical idea and making it a real thing in the world.
Yep. Exactly.
And I mean, I think that we need more of that. You know, it's one of the problems that I have with climate change, and one of the problems I have with the environment and people telling me to do my part is what you said earlier, which is, well, what can I do? I mean, I compost.
Right.
How much more can I do here on my own individually, you know? And maybe the answer to that is not a whole lot, but maybe what you're doing is saying it's not just you, it's a community here. And maybe you're maxed out as an individual and there's not a whole lot more you can do, but when you join this community, now suddenly the potential for you to contribute is got a new level to it.
Right.
And as we reach those new levels, a new level is formed. And that's kind of got to be fun to both kind of gamify and level up and go from level 1 to level 2. But then also, if you've got real world stuff happening, you know, if the water is cleaner, if the rivers are cleaner, if the trash is less, if, you know, the bears aren't getting into the recycling bins because there's less recycling for them to get into.
Right.
That's all like positive feedback that I can see, you know, that I can feel, that I engage within my environment, that then it gives me the encouragement to want to do more.
Right. Well, and I know we're kind of strapped up time here, but I just want to say, like, I think, you know, at the end of the day, too, you have a job, right? Everyone knows. They're part of a bigger thing that's a bigger contributor, likely to impact.
Right.
And having more people inside of that thing who have the mindset of, like, oh, wait, hey, like, we're in a boardroom, we're making a decision about a development or something. Like, oh, hold on, I read or I remember, you know, and it's a cognitive, like, bing, like, versus not even on the table.
Right.
And that's the biggest part, right?
Okay.
It's like just bringing the environment as a forethought. Maybe not number 1, 2, and 3, but maybe 5.
Right, not 17.
Right.
Hey, man, it's, you know, it sounds to me like you've got an ambitious project. It sounds to me like there's a lot of work to be done ahead of you. And I mean, as somebody who it is 17 in my world, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. And so encountering somebody like you is a little bit inspiring because it's nice to know that there's somebody like yourself out there who might be leading the charge in a fight that's a, you know, uphill battle. You know, it's not easy, whether it's actually implementing the ideas into the real world or even just like you were saying, bringing the knowledge to the forefront in a way that is not intimidating. It doesn't overwhelm people. It makes them feel empowered. It makes them feel like they do have agency and that they do have a job in this small way, that even though their individual part might not feel like they're doing too much, you get a bunch of people doing the same thing, and suddenly the collective effort is noticeable, it's significant, it's impactful. And I think that targeting the younger demographic is the right way to go. And that ideally, if you get that out there into the forefront of like the zeitgeist and the cognition of all of the people, these young people will, you know, propagate that information upward to these older people, which is a lot of that's how, kind of recycling came around for my family. It wasn't necessarily my parents that were super into recycling, it was their children that were bringing that from the school back to the house with their little, these are the recyclable materials. We have to separate this stuff. My parents are like, what are you talking about? And then ultimately everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Before we wrap here, why don't you hit them everybody one more time with the name of the company, where they can find you,
Sure.
and then any of the other things that you want people to make sure that they know before we end the podcast about the business or yourself.
Yeah, totally. So we're called Humanity. www.humanity.us. Launching our new website this weekend. There'll be opportunities to sign up for beta, and a big part of our beta marketing and launch strategies. We're going to do a tour. We're going to do a zero carbon tour, and we're going to go state by state as our team with cameras. We're going to tell the story, and we have been telling the story kind of behind the scenes of the creation of the company, so you can kind of follow along with the behind the scenes, what it's like to build a startup in the U.S. right now, with an uphill battle, like you're saying, and ultimately, we're creating co-authors to our movement and not just users. We want you to be a part of the journey and not just like a bystander. And so, any experts, any corporate sponsors, anyone who wants to embark in this amazing journey of exploration of the environmental world and develop a deeper, fun connection with it, please, you're welcome. So
cool. All right. So www.humanity.us.
Yep.
Do you have any personal socials or anything like that you want to throw out?
We have the Humanity. It's called Humanity_org is our Instagram.
Okay.
That's where a lot of the storytelling's going to be happening. So.
Cool. All right, great. Well, Mitch, it was great sitting down with you. Thanks for coming into the show and letting us know a little bit more about your business and giving the people here in Aspen a little bit more insight as to what the locals here are doing and how they're up to many things. Obviously, Mitch lives down in Basalt, but if you do want to see him, pop in over to the Aspen Meadows. He's usually behind the bar over there, and you can say hello and ask him any of the questions that you got about Humanity in person, or maybe just get a fancy cocktail.
Yeah.
I don't know, but either way, that's going to do it for this episode of All About Aspen. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm your host, Landon Like a Plane, and I'm taking off. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Landon. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Hopefully that was
good.
That was fun.
Right? They go fast, huh?
They go really fast.
Yeah, man, it's been a half an hour.
I know. It's like